Copper and aluminum are the primary beneficiaries of the grid spending increase. That $800 billion is going to buy copper, which is money.
Joining us now is Tony Sage. He's CEO and Executive Chair of Critical Metals. Tony, welcome to Power Lunch. I'm glad you're here. Let's start with Greenland. When do you expect that operations, actually digging critical minerals out of the ground in Greenland, when will that start?
More yttrium or neodymium, or at least until they were not talking about it much until a few years ago.
The White House taking a 10% stake in Trilogy Metals, securing energy and mining projects in Alaska.
The iron ore, the gold, the copper, the aluminum, the nickel, all the metals are so thinly traded and so critical. You have no chance to get off of crude oil. You can't build electric cars and windmills and solar and have a modern military without these metals. So there's a reason why underwater power cables are so expensive.
Now, the White House says that this is a bid to try to loosen China's grip on the critical mineral supply chain. And if we look at the data from last year, China was responsible for about 70% of global output when it...
That's what it looks like when you put up a windmill offshore Nantucket Island and you want to bring that electricity and be green. It's all copper, 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 copper.
And he was interested in just creating this massive ore body, which it is. It's 4.7 billion tons. If we drilled the whole lot, it'd probably last 1,000 years. So
right now, we're expecting that to be a $270 billion a year market by tomorrow morning. And where's this metal going to come from? There's no copper in inventory at all. Let me show you how bad this problem is.
2026 could quite possibly be the biggest year for the metals. But it's not that it's a commodity cycle, it's more that it is an intrinsic power cycle. Because 2026 isn't really about whether or not the markets go up. It's about something else. 2026 is probably going to be about whether the West can still afford to live the way it has promised to forever. Every AI rollout, every green transition pledge, every deficit-funded budget, all of it collapses into one unavoidable question. Who controls the physical materials that make the days and the world of tomorrow possible? And if you think it's just inflation or speculation, then why are governments suddenly fighting over the most geostrategic rocks on the planet? So let's name the mechanism clearly like we always do here. No ideology, no fluff. Currency debasement plus electrification plus AI infrastructure, which all heads up in metal insecurity and metal scarcity. Since the 2020s, US federal debt is up $13 trillion. No, I didn't misspeak, that's how much it's up. G7 central bank balance sheets have expanded almost $10 trillion. On top of all of that, real rates are negative for the most of the last 4 years. At the same time, global electricity demand is projected to rise by a massive 30% by 2030. AI compute demand growing 30 to 40% annually. Targets requiring 2 to 3 times the amount of copper that we actually mine right now. Now, you can print dollars, you can print yen, you can print bonds, but you can't print silver, you can't print copper, you can't print gold, you can't print any of these metals. So ask yourself this, if money supply can expand absolutely infinitely, but metal supply can't, what exactly is being repriced? Okay, let's talk about the dollar, because this is where we're heading into. Every metal trade always starts here. The US now runs 6 to 7% of GDP annual fiscal deficits. I know it's in the peacetime era with low unemployment, but it's still acting as if the economy is running hot in a wartime setting. Interest expense is exceeding $1 trillion per year, and debt to GDP is over 100%, higher than post-World War II. Historically speaking, reserve currencies don't die merely in crashes. They die in a slow erosion.
The monetary order is breaking down. Okay. What I mean by the monetary order is that fiat currencies and debt as a storehold of wealth is not being held by central banks in the same way. And that there was a change. The biggest market to move last year was the gold market, far better than the tech markets, right, and so on. And the U.S. markets underperformed foreign markets because of the fact you could see it in the numbers of the central banks and so on. So let's just look at the fact that on the other side of trade, deficits and trade wars, there are capital and capital wars.
Since the 2000s, dollar purchasing power is actually down 40%. And gold is up 700%. Copper is up 450%. Gold isn't going up per se, but the unit of measurement, the denominator, is just deteriorating at an ever faster clip. This is what always happens in fiat currency, so there's nothing new here, right? If the dollar is strong, why does it buy less energy, less groceries, less metal, less labor, less every single thing every single year? This is not just incompetence. This is structural political design. Governments face three options all of the time, and they're always trying to fight or create strategies around these three options all the time. Austerity equals unrest, default equals collapse, not being able to fund themselves on international markets, and debasement is just a hidden tax. They always choose the hidden tax. It's the easiest one, it's what keeps them in power for the longest amount of time, and it's the one that avoids public unrest and strife. They always choose the hidden tax, and it makes sense. In 2020 and 2024, M2 money supply surged by 40%. CPI officially averaged 5 to 6%, and asset inflation, like it always does, ran far above real wages. Debasement doesn't show up as collapse. It shows up as prices declining and detaching from income completely. And historically, during that debasement, stocks always lag real assets. Bonds, they fell outright, and metals lead last. But they also lead the most explosively and the fastest. So ask yourself this: if inflation is just temporary or transitory, why has nothing actually gotten cheaper? Well, because nothing ever gets cheaper. Once the rates of inflation rise, the prices never go down unless we're in a truly deflationary spiral, which governments will never allow to happen, because that is literally anathema. That is the death knell for any kind of capitalistic-led government, so it never happens. And this is where it turns geopolitical inherently. Let's talk China. China controls 70% of the rare earth processing. It controls 50% of the refined copper growth. It got dominant positions in lithium, tungsten, graphite, cobalt, all of the rare metals that we all need for tomorrow. Since 2018, resource nationalism has risen 20% to 60% globally, depending on where you are. This isn't trade, this is literally inventory warfare. The West has outsourced the extraction of these critical minerals and metals for years and years, but now it wants supply security without any of the mines. There is no world or any iteration or permutation where that actually makes sense. So the uncomfortable question has to be this: if metals are strategic, why did we let someone else control them? Why did we let them become the backyard of someone else? Why did we lose all the manufacturing capacity and the ability to process them if we know they are the metals of the future?
But words are not China's only weapon in this trade war. They're also using, trade.
China's retaliation now includes suspending exports of rare earth minerals and magnets to the United States. Those materials are essential to a number of American industries, including car makers, aerospace manufacturers, and semiconductor producers.
China produces 90% of the world's rare earth minerals.
Okay, so rare earth metals are critical. Well, maybe we should have thought that before we launched a trade war against a country that had them all. I mean, where are we going to get our gadolinium now, huh? We're going to buy Congolese gadolinium? That shit's mid. Well, what else are they hitting us with?
China has reportedly told Chinese airlines to stop buying parts from American companies, and it says it will no longer accept deliveries of Boeing jets.
Oh, come on, you're not going to accept our Boeing jets? Well, good luck finding another plane with self-crashing technology.
We know that electrification is inevitable. Why is supply always optional? Well, the answer is it isn't. Drones, defense, rare metals, they are all mandatory, they're obligatory, they are requirements. Now, here's the quiet part that isn't being said out loud by many people, especially our political class. Modern warfare is metal intensive. I'm not talking about like the irons or the steels or all of those things that we used in like grade 1 war in World War I and World War II. I'm talking about metals for drones, sensors, guidance systems, satellites. They all rely on rare earth magnets, high purity silver, specialized alloys. Global defense spending just hit $2.4 trillion, all-time highs, but supply chains are chronically constrained. Wars aren't won with paper derivatives or financial assets. They're won with the inputs. Who can outproduce, who can manufacture? So ask yourself this: how do you defend an empire that doesn't control its own material?
Consuming 30 million tons of copper a year, only 4 million tons of which is recycled. That means to maintain 3% GDP growth, now listen carefully, with no electrification, this is with burning oil and gas. To maintain global 3% GDP growth, we have to mine the same amount of copper in the next 18 years as we mined in the last 10,000 years. In the next 18 years, I've got to mine the same amount of copper as we mined in the last 10,000 years without electrification, without data centers, without solar and wind and the greening of the world economy. You people have no idea whatsoever what we're facing. You're dreaming. Since 1900, the energy to produce copper, the energy you need to make copper is 16-fold up. As the ore grade in the world goes down, we need more and more energy to produce the very metal that produces the energy, and water consumption has doubled. So grades are declining in the world's mines. The easy copper mines were mined. They're like 100-year-old ladies laying in bed waiting to die in Chile. So Chile counts for a lot. It's 24% of global copper mine production. But, you know, their costs are in the third or fourth quartile. They're very expensive. They burn coal in the Chilean grid. And solar doesn't work for a mine because the sun only shines 5 hours a day. Solar is useless unless you have grid-scale storage. So we're heading for a train wreck in Chile. We need 6 giant Tier 1 mines to come online every year between now and 2050, when I'm scheduled to be 100 years old, to meet copper demand. That means 40% of the production for new mines for electrification, data centers, and grid upgrades. And all this bullshit about AI, everything you're hearing, like, it's a fantasy because we don't have the energy. Now, maybe we can build nuclear power plants. What are they made out of? All those metals I told you about. We don't even have the capability in this country to weld the containment vessels in a traditional nuclear power plant. We used to build them in this country. Korea can build a nuclear power plant.
Do you defend an empire that doesn't control its own material? I mean, it's a great question. I had to say it twice. Here's the core problem. Governments promised us a few things. They promised green transitions, de-electrification, decarbonisation, AI revolutions, military readiness, cheap energy, not to mention like a respectable and honourable retirement eventually, hopefully. But they've never secured the correct inputs, at least in the Western Hemisphere they never did. Global copper deficits are projected by the mid to late 2020s. Annual shortfalls of around 6 to 8 million tons. That's incredible. That needs new mines coming online to the tune of 6 Tier 1 mines per year, which is unfathomable given the fact that we haven't found even one of them in the last 10 years. Markets are not going to be able to fix that with financial engineering or derivatives or innovation. They're going to have to fix it with price discovery to incentivize people to actually explore and discover those new mines. That's why commodities stay ignored until they aren't, until they can't be anymore. So why, if everyone needs the exact same scarce material at the exact same time, who's going to get priced out? Where is the spigot going to find the bottleneck? Where is the water going to squirt out uncontrollably? This is why precious metals sit at the center of everything. Now, gold is the monetary insurance. Silver is the monetary and industrial insurance. Copper is civilization. Copper is electrification. Copper is joining everything together. Rare earth metals are the choke points. Gold doesn't fail, silver doesn't substitute, copper doesn't scale quickly. Precious metals aren't about upside, they're about non-participation in debasement. So ask yourself this: if the system is so sound, if everything's so okay, why does it fear the assets that control it? And why does it fear the assets that it can't control? You have to really think about this, especially in 2026, because it's not going to be remembered as the crash year. I don't want you to think like that. It will be remembered as the year physical reality overruled financial promises and, came back to earth with a bang, with gravity. Because when currencies weaken, supply chains fracture. When demand hits limits, that's when the real price discovery occurs. Paper claims become stretched, derivatives start to explode, but the metals never do. And it's not about getting rich. That's not how we should be thinking about this. It's about being diluted out of absolute relevance. Because in the next decade, power won't be belong to whoever prints the most money. No, it's not going to be like that anymore. It will be belonging to whoever controls what can't be printed. Now, I know I'm not always right, and I don't ever claim to be, and I'm probably going to be wrong about this, but I need you guys to give me your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings in the comments below. What are you thinking? Do you think I'm onto something? Do you think I'm not? Do you think I'm pessimistic, or do you think I'm too optimistic? Let me know in the chats. In a follow-up video, we're going to be talking more about this warfare issue, more about these critical minerals, more about these critical metals, and how we can be positioning in our portfolios to take advantage of it. But for now, ciao for now.